known for black smoke. That's all I can tell you, black smoke and the rubber smell. I would have never paid attention. I would have stayed back in the bedroom, and Lord knows if we would have been here.
Police haven't confirmed the woman in custody is the child's mother. They say she was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries and then to police headquarters for questioning. New chased after them and was stabbed. He later died at the hospital. If you know anything, reach out to Crime Stoppers Atlanta. The 6 people accused of torturing
accumulated generational wealth. And if they can't afford to pay for their home, that means that they're not stable in their job, they're not able to provide for their family, and that definitely indicates more problems down the line.
Despite the rise, the numbers are well below the levels the nation experienced during the 2008 housing crisis. Back when so-called ninja loans made to borrowers with no income, no job, were common. Though today's borrower tends to have more equity, rising financial burdens, including the resumption of student loan payments, which starts this weekend, is putting more pressure on family budgets. One survey of economists shows 3/4 agree that resumption of payments will have a negative effect on homeownership that could last a year or more. Some expect more loan delinquencies. And while foreclosures typically occur most frequently in lower-income neighborhoods, Adams data suggests that a growing number of middle and upper-middle-income households may be in over their heads. In New York, Jerry Willis, Fox Business.
happening now at Georgia.
The Inflation Reduction Act is cutting costs for working families like yours, cutting the price of insulin to $35 a month for seniors, cutting the cost of prescriptions by making Medicare negotiate lower drug prices, and cutting back on our dependence on foreign oil by investing in American clean energy instead. So we can cut more ribbons on factories and manufacturing floors and cut more good-paying checks for American workers. The Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act, it's here to save you money, no matter how you cut it.
To mean more people are unemployed, the Department of Labor says the state's unemployment rate is up to 3.4%. That's up from 3.3% in August. The Department of Labor says there are more available jobs than there are workers. The education, health services, leisure, and hospitality all had a good month. If it feels like you're paying more for health insurance, you're actually right. The Kaiser Family Foundation survey found the average health insurance plan costs $24,000 a year. It's up from $500. That's up $500 from last year. Workers are paying about $6,575 toward their insurance. Employers cover the rest. But your Thanksgiving dinner will be a little bit cheaper this year. Walmart and Aldi say that they'll be cutting prices for Thanksgiving and Christmas meals. Walmart says that their turkey will cost at least $1 per pound. Gravy, potatoes, pumpkin pie, and butter will be about half off. Both stores say they want to give extra relief to shoppers this year. Today, community organization Hosea Helps unveiled plans for their upcoming holiday giveaways. This year, Hosea Helps is continuing its annual holiday Festival of Service kickoff and their Great Turkey Drop initiatives. The organization will give away some 500 turkeys and hams, each for families in need. This is in addition to a number of other canned foods and goods that families can receive as well. We spoke with one leader who told us why giveaways like these are so important right now.
The Inflation Reduction Act is cutting costs for working families like yours, cutting the price of insulin to $35 a month for seniors, cutting the cost of prescriptions by making Medicare negotiate lower drug prices, and cutting back on our dependence on foreign oil by investing in American clean energy instead. So we can cut more ribbons on factories and manufacturing floors and cut more good-paying checks for American workers. The Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act, it's here to save you money, no matter how you cut it.
They need to make ends meet. And this organization helps them by subsidizing food, meaning sometimes you don't have enough money in your budget to get all the food that you need.
Hosea Helps is up to the challenge as it's their 54th year of serving the greater Atlanta area.
Former State Department official says about what he thinks is the actual reason. And a national defense expert explains Iran's role behind terrorist groups in the Middle East. What's the goal of the regime? That and more when we return. Report. I'm Steve Lance. To take in Palestinian refugees or not? U.S. lawmakers are split. However, leaders of the Arab world are clear. They're not going to accept any Palestinians. NTD's Ariane Pazdar explores why Arab countries are closing the door to fellow Muslims.
تشهده الأراضي الفلسطينية. The leaders of both Egypt and Jordan this week saying they won't take in any Palestinian refugees from Gaza or the West Bank. Both are Muslim countries and border Palestine. However, they're making their stance very clear.
No refugees in Jordan, no refugees in Egypt.
The leaders of the two Arab nations say they're not accepting refugees because if there are no people in Gaza, then Israel could just take over. However, some are questioning whether that's the only reason why they won't take them.
The Palestinians have a reputation for wrecking any country that they go to in large numbers.
Bart Marcoy is a former Foreign Service officer with the U.S. State Department. He says Jordan, Lebanon, Tunisia, Kuwait, and others serve as examples for his comments, such as a refugee camp for Palestinians in Lebanon, which he says became a breeding ground for government infiltration.
The Palestinian politicians were endorsing various factions within the Lebanese government, and they were supplying militiamen to the various militias attached to various factions within the Lebanese government.
Egypt's president this week gave another reason for not accepting Palestinian refugees, namely that Hamas members might come to Egypt this way and then fire rockets from Egypt into Israel, which would drag Egypt into the war.
It is a secondary reason. The primary reason is they don't want Hamas firing rockets at Cairo or Alexandria.
And it's not just countries in the Middle East. On Thursday, officials from Europe said they now want to send back certain refugees if they pose a security threat. This comes after multiple terrorist attacks in Europe just this week. 2 people have been killed in Belgium, and many more have been affected across Europe.
We expect the European Parliament to provide a common position that would allow us to proceed with expedited returns.
Another official said the European Union already increased returns by 20% this year. Ariane Pazdar, NTD News.
So thank you for joining us.
Hi, Steve. Great to be with you.
Tom, I want to get your thoughts here. How are countries like Iran, Russia, and China influencing the current Israel-Hamas conflict, and what are their respective interests, if you will, and strategies in that region?
Yeah, Steve, great questions. And let me just preface this by letting you know and your audience that I come to you here from National Defense University, where I'm a research scholar who focuses on research that represents my own analysis and opinions and not necessarily those of the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, or National Defense University.
Of course.
Having said that, I think that the questions you ask are very important ones because although the conflict focus right now is the intensity between Hamas and Israel, there really is a wider set of factors that matter here geostrategically and geopolitically. So let me kind of work inside out from my perspective, researching for the last 20 years the interactions between players in South Asia and the Middle East, particularly having to do with their terrorist organizations. And so here I'll flag up Iran and its affiliations with Hamas. In reality, Iran's affiliations with Hamas are but one of 4 major sets of proxy affiliations that Iran has had in the region for the better part of the last 35 years, each of which it leverages and manipulates to try to do 2 primary things. First, to deny the status and the existence of Israel as a state, which it finds illegitimate and a threat to its own religiosity and its own rule. And second, to weaken, reduce, or embarrass the presence of the United States in the region to try to get us to leave with the assumption that our departure would leave them as the strongest and most influential player in the region. And the belief that certainly since the arrival of the Ayatollah's regime in the early 1980s, that if we leave, their strength would be paramount in the region. So from that perspective, Hamas is a long-standing actor, proxy, that uses violence and terrorist activities. Some of it aided and abetted with leaders in the Iranian military and intelligence services. Some of it, indirectly provided weapons at distance, and some of it just the regular kind of flow of munitions and arms that keeps the group going. The other fronts that Iran manages, and your audience probably is somewhat aware of, is in Lebanon, Hezbollah, which is a religiously affiliated terrorist organization that also has had government structures for the last 20 years or so inside Lebanon. They also, Iran, has facilitated and enabled insurgent terrorist groups in both Yemen and southern Saudi Arabia, known as the Houthis, who are also co-religious groups with the Iranians. That battle, that proxy battle with the Houthis, really kind of only wound down after almost a decade of being raged in Yemen, just here in the last year or so, as the Saudis and Iranians, both kind of exhausted, agreed to tell their proxies to stand down. And then finally, Iran, as we know for the last 15 to 20 years, has religious affiliated Sunni Muslim radicalized actors in Iraq, who also are involved and engaged, and in some cases are engaged all the way up in Syria, where they are active with fellow religious radicals inside Syria. So that picture for your audience is, Iran kind of on all three sides of Israel with these groups, Hamas kind of in the southwest, Iranian-backed Iraqi terrorist groups and Syrian outfits astride the Golan Heights into Syria, and then Lebanese Hezbollah in the north, and then this other fight further south. So that's kind of the inside the region picture and framework.
Retired Colonel Dr. Tom Lynch, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Steve.
Afghanistan with the Taliban. So you've got to look at that piece of it. And it's the biggest piece is China.
Really sober reminder. Casey Fleming, as always, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
That is all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report.